Now what will it be? Death or exile?
Hi there, guys. If you are tuned into this video, you have come here for a spoiler-free review of the new Netflix horror series, The Haunting of Bly Manor. Welcome to the film Exiles series and movie reviews. Today we're going to take on quite a cool format. We're going to do it as a Q&A. I have not seen the series. I'm going to interview one of our film exiles who has seen the series, and with that, I'd like to welcome to the review Christian. Christian, how are you doing?
What's up, man? I'm doing all right. I'm really happy to be doing this with you, and thanks for asking me.
Very cool. All right. So this is the synopsis of this horror series. It's called The Haunting of Bly Manor, obviously, and the synopsis is thus. After an au pair's tragic death, Henry hires a young American nanny to take care of his orphaned niece and nephew, who reside at Bly Manor with the chef Owen, groundskeeper Jamie, and housekeeper Mrs. Gross. And then apparently everything starts to go crazy. So that's just a brief spoiler-free synopsis. The creator and writer, showrunner, overall producer is Mike Flanagan. He also did The Haunting of Hill House, and he also did Dr. Sleep, the movie. So this is a sequel to The Haunting of Hill House. It stars Emily Bates Smith, Benjamin Evan Ainsworth, Henry Thomas, and it brings back all the cast basically of the last series, and just puts them in a new role. And yeah, let's find out if this is worth watching or not. So first off, Christian, I'm going to ask you, you finished it. What are your, real quick, one sentence overall thoughts after seeing it?
One sentence: this will stay with you for days, maybe longer. I've only finished it, recently.
Okay.
But I think this will stay with you for days, and that's in a good way.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you for some more intricate details. One of the things about series that's important to me is how is it paced, how it's written. Is this a series that you're gonna binge through and you just can't wait to get to the next episode, or is it like a slow burn? Yeah, tell us about the pacing of the series.
They definitely had to be careful because you don't have a ton of episodes. So if you slow burn it too much, you're basically backloading all the great stuff into the final few episodes. And I think they did a pretty good balance here. However, the first three are a little slow. And while they do introduce the characters and there's an emotional attachment to them because there's a human condition there that I think all of us will recognize, it does take a couple of episodes to get into it. But man, once you get to that fourth episode, it's off to the races, and the pacing is fantastic.
Okay. So did you binge this quickly, or how did you get through it?
We binged it within 3 days. So yeah,
Okay.
that's fairly quick.
Yeah,
Yep.
fairly quick. Yeah. Okay. So the cast is returning from season one. I thought that they were incredible in season one. It was just full of stars, of unknown stars. They all did such an incredible job. Their chemistry was really, really impressive. How did they work together on this one? And also, was it distracting to have known them from a completely different story and then see them all together in this one? What was that experience like?
So to answer your second question, it is slightly distracting, but I've also been a fan of shows like American Horror Story, and you see how that kind of anthology series plays out. And if you understand what they're going for, that shock kind of disappears over the first couple of episodes, and then you realize that you're in a completely different setting and a completely new story. But it did take me a little bit to get used to it because I was so used to them after being so attached to them during Hill House, So it took me out of it just a touch, with the exception of Victoria Pedretti, who plays the character of Danny. I will not ruin it. However, she catches you immediately, like right away, and she is the character of Danny as opposed to being Nell in Haunting of Hill House. She did such a great job from the very beginning. The performances all around, the chemistry is great, and it's really the relationship between her and the two children that she's watching throughout the series. Man, that's what really anchors it. I was really surprised by the two child actors, and they brought a lot to the table. And it's really the relationship between those three and the other characters too, but those three are really what anchors the story. So I would call out those three performances as definitely the top. Those are the ones that you want to watch.
Okay. Wow. All right. I'm looking forward to that. Horror stories are all about atmosphere, right? I appreciate atmosphere in every sort of a movie or film that I watch. My favorite directors are very insistent on tone and atmosphere. There are a lot of factors that come to bear on that, like, cinematography, score, production design, costuming, all that sort of thing. So let's talk about atmosphere. Is this very atmospheric? Does it have like an oppressive tone that really just, grabs you and draws you in and never lets you go? And so what can you tell us about, like, let's start with the cinematography.
I would say, like, if you're thinking of the cinematography is good. It is it feels a little Netflicious at times, if that's a right word. It's a word that you and I know have used before. Just because it can feel a little bit like a TV show on occasion, and it never feels cheap. I want to be very clear that it never feels cheap. But the way the shots, the especially the long shots of the mansion, the grounds, the gardens, the lake, which is very important. I won't say any more than that, especially the lake. The scenes inside the house, building up the atmosphere, making the house feel like it's a living creature as opposed to just a house that everybody is living in. That is done incredibly well. It just can feel very digital at times instead of very warm. It can have a very harsh edge to it at times, especially the outdoor scenes. They can seem a little harsh as opposed to the indoor scenes. So yeah, I mean, I still think it's excellent, but you can see the difference between like watching a nice cinematic movie as opposed to this,
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
What about the musical score? Was it very memorable? Is this something you're going to be running back to listen to over and over again? Or was it completely forgettable? Or was it like in the middle, like just effective, but not something that you'd ever revisit again?
I think you nailed it there. It's effective. It's got some of the themes from Hill House, and you'll hear them throughout the show. That nice piano theme that was played. And that's the one theme that I constantly remembered. And there are a couple of, because it's set in the 80s, and they did a very good job with the 80s setting, but there's a couple of like poppy songs. Other than that, man, and there are some songs, by the way, some poppy 80s songs that are used incredibly well. But other than that, the score, in my opinion, is not truly memorable. I didn't really feel that it was memorable.
All right. What about the production design? You talked about it being in the 80s. Did you feel that they went above and beyond? How would you rate that? How would you describe it to someone who hasn't seen it before?
There's I think there's sometimes, like, if you look at Stranger Things, like they can get really in your face and be like, hey, by the way, we're in the 80s, boom, 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 be in your face. And I felt like Bly Manor didn't do that. It's set in England, so it's going to be a little different than a United States setting anyway. But the clothes that especially the lead character wears, the couple of times when they show the town, like if they show London, yes, I think it was done very well because it wasn't overstated. And even like when they showed like situations when they were in the lawyer's office and he's wearing his three-piece suit, it's very 80s, but it's not in your face 80s. So, technology is correct with the telephones and everything. I think they did a good job with setting the proper, atmosphere there, but without slapping you in the face overdoing it that it was 80s.
Okay. And one of the things that just blew me away with the first series in this overall anthology, Haunting of Hill House, was the writing. I thought that the way that Mike Flanagan was able to address things like drug addiction, mental health, childhood trauma, fractured, family relationships and estrangement, and ground that in the tropes and rules of horror. I thought that was just absolutely brilliant. And I also love the fact that there were rules.
Hmm.
So one thing I don't like about a lot of horror movies is that there are no actual rules. Things just happen. Um, and I thought that he just had a really good structure to things. And it made it very believable. So how did you find the writing in this one? Were there any episodes that like blew you away? I remember like the episode where they're at the funeral home
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
Haunting of Hill House was like it's one of the greatest things I've ever seen. Also, the mental health, like mental institution,
Hmm.
episode, that gives me chills to this day. So, were there any episodes that had that same effect on you? And just as an overall, do you feel like Mike Flanagan has continued with his really good writing?
The quick answer to that is yes, and I'll break it down a couple ways and try to keep it brief. There are definitely, to me, there were two episodes that gave me that feeling yet again. As I said, episode 4 is where things kind of start to take off. At least in my mind, I can't say much more because it'll spoil it for people. But episode 4 is one of them. The penultimate, the one right before the final episode,
Mhm.
that really shows you what happened in that house leading up. Oh my, that's a great episode. And they did that with Hill House too, as they were getting ready
Mhm.
to, lead up to what's in the red door, what's behind the red door. Same thing here. And it was done very well. So yeah, there were definitely a couple of episodes that you're like, whoa, that they stuck with me. Not to mention the last 5 minutes of the entire season are wow. And for multiple reasons that I won't go into, but it's just they're very, very good. The writing I think is good because it follows what you said before. There are still rules. Things don't just happen in Bly Manor because it's supposed to scare you or there's supposed to be a jump
Mhm.
scare or whatever. The ghosts exist for a certain reason, and those rules are still concrete at this point. But you
Mhm.
don't know them throughout the show until it gets towards the
Mhm.
end.
Until yeah,
Yeah, but the rules
and
are
then it
there.
all makes sense.
Totally. And it really clicks, especially the final two episodes. It really all clicks. And the final thing I'll mention, it goes hand in hand with what you said before. There's more going on here. This might disappoint some people. The writing is still fantastic in this episode, but it's not as horror as Hill
Mhm.
House was. This show is more about loss, love, and the big theme running through it is second chances.
Mhm.
And so it's not quite as horror filled as the first show. It's still scary, but Hill House was definitely scarier than this. Well, this one will punch you in the gut a little bit more. It's a little more emotional.
Okay, I really like that comparison. So just briefly, one sentence.
Hmm.
Do you prefer season one? Do you prefer season two,
Hmm.
or is there no ground to compare them on? Just give us a brief sentence about the comparison.
I think you can compare them,
Mhm.
and this is not spitting in the face in Bly Manor at all. I do believe Haunting on Hill House is a little bit better for
Mhm.
some of the reasons, just because I lean a little bit towards horror.
Mhm.
But like I said, doesn't knock Bly Manor at all. It's still very good. It's just I think season one is still a little bit better. It's a hair above it.
Okay, all right. And so give us your overall thoughts on it. And is it a must watch or is this something that, people can just, you don't really have to watch it. Let's hear your overall thoughts and give us a grade on an F to A scale or a 0 to 10 scale as well.
I would definitely say if you're going on a grade with Haunting of Hill House being between that A and A plus, this is more of like an A minus, not
Okay.
really quite a B plus. I think it's too good to be a B plus. If you're a fan of horror, if you're a fan of what Flanagan has done, even if you've read like Turn of the Screw, and stuff like that, like a lot of that this is based on those works, I think you have to watch this.
Okay.
It is a must watch. From the standpoint of it being kind of like a pop culture thing too. People
Mm.
are going to be talking about it and everything. And when you watch it, even if you're only watching it for the pop culture stuff, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. The performances are so good. You get it's the characters that draw you in. That setting and everything that we just talked about a couple minutes ago
Mm.
is very strong. And so is this feeling of unease and anxiety that's just hanging over the entire show. But by the time you get to that fourth or fifth episode that I spoke about, at that point, these characters feel real. So my eyes teared up at the end of the show. because I really enjoyed these characters, and watching what happened to them, I felt for them both good and bad. And that's how I know the show was a winner, because I wasn't just engrossed in everything we talked about with the atmosphere and the ghosts and everything. I was engrossed in the characters, and I think if you watch it, that's going to happen to you too.
Okay. Well, so on a scale of 1 to 10, you give it an A minus. That's pretty high praise.
Yeah.
To watch list, I think I'm going to bump it up a couple spots based on your review. Thank you very much. Where can people find you to discuss Haunting of Bly Manor further?
Sure. Hit me up on both Twitter and Instagram. I'm at chart6363. It's the therapeutic guitarist.
All right. And I've been yours truly, Lupe. You can find me on Twitter at LiveLoveLupe or on the various social media app, also at LiveLoveLupe. Thank you for listening to this review, and we'll catch you on the next one. Till then, stay exiled.